it just is written in legislation to do with property taxes overall. It's $2.50 for every $500 of the valuation of the property. So 1/2 of 1%, only on the value of the property over $1 million, and only on properties that have an assessed value of over $1 million, which I need to remind folks, but usually the assessed value is also higher than the market rate that the home will go for. Same as the transfer fee, however, it does allow towns to apply this only to properties valued at a higher threshold. So a town could implement this at 2 million or at 3 million or at 5 million or really 8 million. And since this is a recurring fee, like this really could be targeted towards the most expensive homes in that community. It is not intended to apply broadly. To permissible uses. The permissible uses under this home rule petition are much narrower than they were under the previous home rule petition. Specifically, it provides a variety of uses, but all of them focused on mortgage assistance programs to benefit year-round residents. The examples it provides are down payment and closing cost assistance for income-qualified year-round resident home buyers, including first-time home buyers. It will provide or for mortgage payment subsidies or interest rate buydowns, refinancing or mortgage modification assistance to prevent foreclosure, mortgage counseling, application assistance, or other support services, gap financing or local matching funds to leverage state or federal mortgage assistance programs like the ones that are currently run through Mass Housing, or other mortgage assistance programs which are permitted through the affordable housing trusts throughout the Cape. Again, the idea here is it's a much more targeted tool here. So I know concerns have been raised in the past with the transfer fee that this is really targeted towards development and how is that money going to be spent? Is it really going to benefit year-round folks? The goal here is really that it would be targeted towards letting folks compete with the seasonal housing market through mortgage assistance for existing structures that already are built. There's a number of exemptions. A lot of them are similar to the ones in the petition, but the one I will point out that's the most, I think, central exemption to this legislation is if the property is either occupied by the homeowner or by the tenant or by a tenant for more than 183 days of the year, it is fully exempt, right? This is specifically non-owner occupancy property tax, or non-tenant occupancy. Beyond that, I'd say the biggest other difference is collection. It's collected through the individual municipal tax assessing offices, unlike the registry of deeds, which would collect the transfer fee. This is collected at the municipal level. And then the funding is really distributed in a very similar way, where it's pooled together at the county, redistributed back to the communities at a 90% rate for where the money was raised, and then 10% remains at the county level for countywide municipal housing initiatives, mortgage assistance initiatives. I think that's an overview. If I missed anything, if there's something folks want to ask about, I'd be happy to answer.
Dan, I thank you. You came in at about 8.5 minutes. Well done. Okay, thank you. So at this point, I think I want to comment and thank our clerk for the what feels to me to be a really excellent summary of this of the legislation. It reads easily, and I think he's provided some nice background there. So I'm going to open it up at this point to questions. Delegate Harder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair. Delegate Gasson, is this only applicable to houses, that people are trying to buy that are capital A affordable, or can it be towards any house that local residents are trying to buy?
No, nothing in the way this is written limits it to capital A affordable, which I think you mean like the general statewide definition, which is 80% of area median income or below. Honestly, the goal with this initiative, as with the last initiative, is actually to acknowledge the fact that there's already a number of programs that exist to help people that are making below 80% of area median income, and really targeted towards folks between 80% of area median income to about 200% of area, which is 80%. Our median income here on the Cape is about $90,000 in Barnstable County. So we're trying to knock. A lot of state programs are going to help you if you're making about 70,000 or less a year as a household. Versus a lot of our municipal jobs for folks that are struggling to live here are people making, 200 or below at this point in time.
Yeah, because it's you need to make what, 258,000 a year in order to think about buying a house. So, all right, thank you. And the cost of the house doesn't have to be the cost of the house can be market rate. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah,
Okay.
And the way these programs often work, I mean, again, it leaves it pretty open-ended in this proposal to let towns decide how they want to use it. But the way the statewide program works and the way a lot of these programs work, at least in a mortgage buy-down scenario, is the county or whatever entity given this money would, when you as a family go to purchase a home, would give you like $150,000 loan to go towards the property, which you could either use a down payment or they would require you to put up a down payment, and this would help you essentially cut it off the price of the house. That loan is zero interest for X number of years. So like for pretty much the duration of your ownership of that house, you owe the county $150,000, but that's it. And then when you sell the property, at appreciated value, you pay the county back that amount of money, and it gets repurposed for future people that want to purchase a home. So essentially and usually you would pay it back with, if the house appreciated 10% while you live there, you would pay it back at a 10% appreciation. Or if the house depreciated, you would pay back a little less. But the idea is we're essentially giving folks a leg up when it comes to purchasing a home by knocking a certain amount of money off the cost of it that they didn't repay in a revolving loan in perpetuity.
Thank you. Okay, other questions? Well, I have a question then, Dan. Oh, Delegate McKelvey, please. You're
muted, Greg.
You're muted. Greg, Delegate McKelvey, you're muted.
I enjoy listening to myself speak. Don't worry. Let me get this straight. So if my neighbor down the street has a home, let's say the home's worth whatever, but it fits in the category the town has selected, right? And they're only in the home, it's a vacation home, and they're only in the vacation home 8 weeks out of the year, they would be subject to that tax.
Yeah. Only if the home was over a certain value.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
That's what, yes. It's over a certain value. Let's say, for sake of discussion, Mashpee put it at 1.5 million, right? And their home is worth 1.6 or 1.8, and they're only there, like I said, 6, 8, 9 weeks a year. They would be subject to that tax. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes,
so this is a tax that seems like it's geared toward second homeowners that either don't stay in the house very long, or maybe people that are not staying there at all and renting all year round, or at least through the summer. Is that correct?
Well,
yes, unless they rent to a year-round resident, right? Like if they rent it to
Correct.
a year-round resident, if they just use it, yes, it's really targeted towards like Airbnbs or folks that like have a second home that they're willing to let sit empty for most of the year.
Gotcha.
But use it only for, as a vacation house.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying that.
Of course.
I'm not seeing any hands raised. So let me ask, I don't see anything that sets limits on who the potential assisted group would be. That is, people needing mortgage assistance. I don't see anything that sets income qualifications, et cetera. Is that correct?
Yes, the only two things, the limits that it sets out there is all these programs have to be for year-round homeowners. That's the only real requirement. And the other ones is the program does contemplate these being on an income qualification basis. So it doesn't lay out the requirements, but one would assume that when it did get implemented, you wouldn't be able to prioritize someone making way above someone else when deciding who it gets prioritized for a loan.
Okay, thank you. I see a hand, Delegate Frizzell, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Dan, how does this interact with Prop 2.5? So, a town is limited, no matter what, to 2.5. So even if you collect more from a certain category of taxpayer, it doesn't change the overall 2.5 limit. It just shifts who's paying the amount of that overall tax. So is this an override and going to be an automatic override of 2.5? How does it work?
That's a good question.
Good question.
And there are
Really good
folks
question.
much smarter than me who could probably tell you, for sure. But this is honestly one of the biggest reasons why I did see it appropriate to be a county-wide initiative and a county-wide special legislation. Prop 2.5 is state law. It's not a constitutional concept. So the hope would be, the concept behind it. And again, it's important, I think, to make sure the drafting meets this intent, but for this to be separate from the municipal cap. And I think that's actually really important when we talk about it in the context of a residential tax exemption, because Doug and Frizzell, what you bring up is really key in a lot of residential tax exemption conversations, because sometimes a residential tax exemption is described as this way of possibly raising more revenue for housing initiatives and so forth. But when a town adopts a residential tax exemption, that shifts the tax burden to part-time residents, but it doesn't actually increase the amount of revenue that the town brings in.
Right.
So if you're going to use it for housing initiatives, you end up needing to both create a residential tax exemption and then a Prop 2.5 override, and somehow, and that's a complicated thing to explain to the voters as well. Of like, oh, we're going to lower your taxes so we can raise your taxes so that you can do this thing with it. The idea behind this is, rather than going through that process, which generally ends up just, even if you get a Prop 2.5 through it, putting more money into the general fund, is to run this through the county through a special act. I know we got a legal opinion back that I haven't had a chance to parse yet, which really recommended that this be drafted as a special act instead of a charter amendment, the way it's drafted now. But the idea would be, it would be drafted in such a way where whatever revenue it raises does not count towards the Prop 2.5 limit that municipalities have. And then that's why it's important that there's a very concise set of categories of what it can be spent on, so that this is, we're raising this revenue, but it's specifically targeted towards these housing initiatives. And it wouldn't, to answer your question, that in a way that doesn't count towards the cap that the municipalities individually
Right.
have.
Okay. A hand up with Delegate Harder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't see it, but is you were talking about who this is for, and you said somewhat, year-round people, local people, somewhat income decided. Can the town decide? So can Harwich say, we're going to do this for all municipal employees, including, and healthcare workers? Could they limit it to that? Would that be up to the town, or could the initial law then specify something like that? Because I think the towns might, if we just let it anybody it'll get into, well, how come, the select board sister got it, but not, the nice family of four whose house just burnt down. So, do you know what I mean? So, I'm wondering if there isn't a way where it could be up, like we did with the, transfer fee, that it would be up to the towns
Yeah.
who gets it.
As written, this would apply. I mean, the towns have a lot of latitude with how they implement these programs right now. If you read uh, the permissible uses, as long as they fall into within a number of categories, I think the scenarios you bring up would be more limited by other existing federal and state law. I think there's the Fair Housing Act would have something to say about deciding who the town can prioritize in this. I know that's a roadblock that towns face right now with trying to do municipal preference for housing. They had to do a specific carve out in the federal Fair Housing Act, so that wasn't a violation of it. So towns have some leeway, but not too much leeway to prioritize people. Income's always one that they can generally set pretty liberally at what they think makes sense. Um, I'm not like if I'm not sure if the town is able to say like it's only for families or only um, for households of this size. But that's something I assume. But in terms of the nepotism concern, I think there would be other laws on the books that would prevent that from happening. I hope that answered the question. Right now, though, it gives whatever towns are allowed to do, they're allowed to do. This bill doesn't limit it.
Right. Thank you. Okay, Delegate Green, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being at this meeting, Delegate Gessen, and being willing to take questions. I don't dispute that there's a need for something of this nature to alleviate the pressure that there is out there, and but I'm not so sure that this is actually the vehicle that I would particularly endorse. But I do have some questions and some different scenarios that I wonder about. One of the scenarios, I mean, so since COVID, in my area anyway, people have been buying up property. In fact, there were 8 people that would just offer $1 million for anything. And I mean, before that, those places were places where people who seasonally worked or worked in town government lived. But those places have been snapped up. They've either been renovated, or what's really happening a lot in my area, I think the whole Outer Cape, at least, if not the Lower Cape and beyond, is that they've become investment vehicles where a group of people will buy shares, basically like stocks, and it's Airbnb.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, do you see that as being different from the person who perhaps has property off Cape, rents even, or has a modest house, perhaps bought property on the Cape even decades ago, is spending summers there, perhaps school teachers, or something. I mean, just as an example, and they come down every summer, for their 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever, and they're planning to retire here. So they would fall under that category as well. Can I just ask you those questions? I mean, how do you envision all of that? Is that something you've considered, and do you have solutions for those or answers for those?
Totally. That point's really well taken, Delegate Green. I think I'll be the first one to say the Cape's economy has always been reliant on the fact that people come here in summer, right? Like growing up, it was a reality I know in Falmouth that our population is 30,000 during the winter and 90,000 during the summer. Same, you go out to Provincetown and their population increases tenfold, right? I don't think my intent with this, and I think folks that support this, the intent's not to even penalize that aspect of it or to try to, envision a Cape Cod where people don't come here over the summer. I think it's one of the things, as much as we gripe about the tourist season, that makes Cape Cod unique and great is, the energy, the life, and everything that we get in the summer, and not even to speak of the fact that our businesses and our economy relies on it. Right. The hope is, none of that, I think, should be scorned by this legislation or even targeted by it. I think my biggest concern these days is just seeing the rising cost of housing for the exact purposes that you're describing, right? You see how it's become a for-profit industry to buy up these second homes, to rent them out as Airbnbs, really to take a tremendous amount of homes off the market, and supply and demand. The more homes get taken off the market, the more it's profitable to rent them for 5 weeks during the summer rather than year round. The less of a housing stock we have for year round folks, the more the price for even that gets driven up. And the goal is really to disincentivize that kind of speculative investment in housing, and also to provide a revenue source to hopefully create a dedicated housing market for year-round folks. All of that to say, I would really like to see this be targeted and not paint second homes with a broad brush. It has the moniker Taylor Swift tax for a reason, right? It's not supposed to capture, a mom and pop second home on the Cape. I would, whether it's raising the threshold from 1 million to like 3 or 5 million, or whether it's, decreasing the number of days that the primary homeowner has to be there from 183 to like 100. I think there's a number of smart ways that we can think about sharpening this scalpel to like really address the core issue, which is a speculative housing, and not target the second homes and the tourist economy that's been at the core of Cape Cod forever. Right. I think there's a distinction there in kind, not just in degree. And I'm a big fan of honing this in every way we can, to make sure we're addressing the root cause without, affecting the population at large. I hope that answered that question. Answer, Doug Green.
Not really.
Okay.
Can I, because I can think of like probably 10 more scenarios where it would affect people that I think you're saying that it wouldn't. But, let that, be said. I don't know. I wanted to ask also another line of questions where I wanted to know, why should county government take this up as opposed to, let's say, a nonprofit that could raise money and work with banks to provide the same kind of relief, so that we're not taking on something else in county government that is really big, has a lot of variables, and then needs another layer of administration, frankly. And who knows whether this money for the administration would go just to the county, or the state would want their cut as well, and on and on. So have you thought about using nonprofits or a different kind of a mechanism to, I mean, I agree that there's a problem, but have you thought of a different way to address this?
Yeah, Chairman Alabama, okay, I'll answer that in two parts real quick as I can.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think first, to the question of a number of scenarios, I think that's where we're having these conversations, Delegate Green, and that's why I think we're not trying to rush this either. I would love to actually have an opportunity as a body to go through all those scenarios and come up with exemptions that make sense to address them. Right? Like, again, there's a reason why I think this is we're at step one here, and we're in no rush to get to the finish line. Like, we should be thoughtful, and we should think about these scenarios and create exemptions for the ones that we fundamentally think are unfair. So I totally agree with you there, and that concern. On the second part of like, why must county government take this on? I think my answer would be, county government doesn't need to take any of it on. It's my position that county government should take on, and I represent the people of Falmouth, and I believe on their behalf that I'm advocating for this to be something county government does, because I don't see another entity that could do it. But it's up to the delegates and the county commissioners to decide whether or not it's something that county government will take on, right? Like that's out of my hands as to like whether or not it's something county government must do. I can only suggest that I think it's a good idea. But why not a nonprofit? I think because at its core, this is a piece of tax legislation, right? Like a nonprofit entity might be able to administer a mortgage assistance program, but it's got to get the money somewhere.
But why
I
not
think-
just raising money, not going through all this process with the second homes and all of that? Why not just a nonprofit raising money and working with banks to work this out so that to the benefit, to the goals that you're talking about?
Oh, I think it's a win-win. I think if we can find a nonprofit that's able to raise millions of dollars to address the housing issues that we see on the Cape,
Good luck.
I'll be the first one to donate what I can to it, and
Yeah,
and I think that'd be fantastic. But I'm a county delegate, and I don't sit on a nonprofit board, so when everything looks like a nail when I'm a hammer. We're just trying to solve this issue using the tools we have at our disposal. But if there is a significant amount of capital that would be willing to invest in it, great. But in the end, it's not a profit-making endeavor. Like,
That's right.
and that, to my mind, is the role of government, is to do something not because it's going to make money, or not do it out of the kindness of our hearts, but to do it because it's the right thing to do. And to my mind, it's the role of government. Folks disagree about that, but that's why we have elections.
Thank you.
thank you. Next is Delegate Friesel, then Delegate Harder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the sharpening the scalpel approach in dealing with people who have owned it, perhaps even inherited, but it's a second home, they only show up a little bit. I mean, one of the things we did in the transfer tax is we created a special exemption for people who've been in the house for X number of years. And I know it also went with a certain age group. But one way to potentially attack that and target it more to the more recent speculation that really substantially increased the prices, which was the COVID, right? If you consider a period of time, if you've owned the house, then you might be able to target to the more recent speculation that's driven these prices so high and exclude a class of people who've owned it for a long time. And it's just over time, they benefited from the bumps and the values, but they're not the speculators. And they may not be showing up 183 days out of the year. Just one thought on the scalpel sharpening approach.
Yeah, and I think another idea that was been brought up, Doug and Friesel, it's well taken, is to look at the assessed value at time of purchase when you look into it. Because, right, like if our concern is somebody's owned this house for 20 years and they bought it 100,000 and now it's $1,100,000 and they have this tax they can't afford, look at it at the point of sale, right? Like if the home was assessed at 100,000 when you bought it, this fee won't be assessed on it until you now resell it to someone new who knows what they're signing up for, pretty much with a much more expensive assessed home. I think there's a number of ways of doing it. I think in the end, it's important to throw these ideas around and brainstorm. And then the next step is really to not go into a blind, but look at data. And
I think what you brought up, though, is that this would not supplant or be an alternate to the transfer tax. They could both
No,
exist.
it could be both.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But I think I must say, I think that your concept about length of ownership is very relevant in trying to target speculative buyers. Anyway, Delegate Harder.
Thank you. I just wanted to answer Delegate Green's question a little, if I could, because I've been doing this for 10 years, working in housing, and if there were any way to do this without having government involvement, we would have done it. I mean, HAC is constantly raising money, and CDP is raising money, and everybody's trying to raise money, and there's no way to just do it out of the goodness of people's heart. I mean, look, we can't even get people to donate $4 million for abused children at Children's Cove. I mean, it's not this has to be a public thing. And the problem is that all the money available, and this is why, we talked about the transfer fee. All the money available is for capital A affordable.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help most of the people we're trying to help. And it also doesn't help the way we're trying to help people. Because as of now, the only way for that to be profitable is to build humongous 40Bs. So, which is, what I've heard, most towns just want to be able to rehab things and rehab houses and help the local people own their own homes. And so there's no money for that. I've been trying to find that money for 10 years. And no, I'm not the only one that's been doing it. People a lot better than me all over the state have been trying to find that money. So, that's just, that's why this is to me so important, because there's no other way, except these kind of, throw things at the wall and see what sticks.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any hands, so I'm gonna put a question to you, Dan. As I indicated at the outset, I am certain this will go through the Finance Committee. And as you know, on finance, we have been engaged of late in an effort to define what are the core functions of the county that we have to, that we're trying to identify in case of changing availability of resources and funding. What are the things that we have to be able to do, and what are the less central functions? I'm going to ask you to think about this because it's going to come up again, but I'm interested in your response at this point to why, and in a sense, I think you've answered it to some extent right here in the go around with Delegate Green and Delegate Harder about other options. But is this a core function?
I think so. I think Barnstable County and its charter was created to address what issues that no one town could do on its own. Housing is clearly an issue of that caliber. So I believe that this is something we need to be doing head on. And I also don't see any other community having the tools to do it. I think that's why I'm championing it. I mean, to be honest, we've got elections coming up, and in the end, it's going to be up to the voters of Cape Cod whether or not they feel the same. But I think fundamentally we've got pretty big challenges facing the Cape, but none as big as housing. And if Cape Cod regional government isn't stepping up to address it, I don't know who is.
Okay, I think that's fair. I don't disagree entirely. Delegate Frederickson, please.
Oh, thank you for the time. Dan, I appreciate your thinking outside the box on a lot of things because I see a lot of myself in you, although I'm like a lot older. And my focuses are something different, have been through my career. But I just wonder sometimes if there is, when we look at taxing, that's such a hot button item right now to add more taxes. And taxes, as we pretty much know, are endless. Once they get put in place, they don't end. It's hard to repeal them. As we can see, we got more money coming into the government than ever, and there's no effort put into reducing taxes at all. I wonder with your thought process, and I'd love to have more conversation with you offline, which I know we need to do, because I have some thoughts where there are things that short of raising taxes that we could do. And I think that's a big sticking point. And again, the core, going back to O'Malley's question about the core processes that the county is involved with, that's a great question. It's a great question, and I'm not so certain this fits one, but it's certainly something we can do to assist towns. And I also say, should this proceed further, which I'm going to guess that maybe not in the next couple months. But we have to make certain that this is vetted through our towns. Because we are just 15 people. We don't necessarily, I think we learned a lesson not to get too involved in something at our level without involving the people it affects the most. That's a basic management principle. So I just, should it get further, I think we just need to look a little further and we need to get together.
Thank you. All right. Does anyone else have a question? Either for Delegate Gessen or a perspective to throw in? Yes, Delegate Harder.
Sorry, I'm being a pain, but
I can recognize the raised hand like that too.
well, to what Delegate Frederickson just said, I agree with everything he said. And those are the conversations I think we should be having online, not offline, because the whole purpose of this and the transfer fee is, as I feel I can speak for Delegate Gessen in this. We believe the county government should help the residents of Cape Cod as much as possible. There are certain things that the towns have to deal with that are so big, for example, schools, that they cannot take up every important issue. And anything the county can do to alleviate those pressures is a plus. And the discussion that you want to have about other ways we could do it without taxation is incredibly important. And it's, like I've said, we throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. Any kind of conversation like that should be held together in a public meeting, so that, because you never know, I might hear you say something and go, oh, we did this in New York, or Greg might say, oh, we did that in Poland. So, I completely agree with everything you said, and I would just like to keep it online so that, in this case, the more cooks spice. At this stage of the cooking, the more cooks we have, add necessary different spices. Bad analogy, but whatever.
Thank you, Delegate Harder. And I certainly agree. And I think, you've heard from the outset here, both from myself and from the proponent, that we envision this as a long discussion. This is not rushed. We're in no hurry here. This is an important issue, and we're making a start at what could we do to help out. And clearly, this is not the end of the story. This is the first of the hearings it's going to get. Certainly finance. Conceivably public services. That's not up to me, but and certainly the full body will be discussing this. And I think getting some of these questions out and putting us now in the position of analyzing what it means and what are the scenarios, what the exemptions should be, who's it going to apply to, is pretty important in our developing a greater comfort level with what we're going to ultimately vote on. All right, we've got 6 minutes. Are there any other questions? Because we do have another meeting immediately following this one. All right. I see no other hands. I think at this point we have discussed what was on the agenda. And I think at that point, with no objections, I'm going to declare this hearing closed. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.